Now, Muses, let us begin to sing of younger men. That is the first line, and the only surviving line, of the archaic Greek epic poem Epigonoi. It was likely written in the 8th century BC. Ancient sources refer to it as a 7,000-line sequel of another lost epic poem called the Thebaid, which was about 7 champions attacking the city of Thebes. This makes this episode the next installment of the Theban cycle, the collection of myths covering multiple generations of the Theban royal family and how they were plagued by a series of curses that eventually brought their doom. Previously, I explored the myths surrounding the Theban king Oedipus, and how he unwittingly killed his father and slept with his mother, and was punished by the gods for this. Oedipus's sons, Eteocles and Polynices, were also cursed. Their sibling rivalry caused Eteocles to chase Polynices out of Thebes and take the kingdom for himself. Polynices, eager for revenge and demanding his right to the throne of Thebes be honored, traveled to Argos and gained the support of its king, Adrastus. Also supporting him were a collection of some of the most unheroic scoundrels in Greek mythology, and together they formed a group known as the Seven Against Thebes. The Seven's attack on Thebes failed. The champions were killed one by one, and Polynices and Eteocles killed each other at the climax of the battle. But the curses on the Theban royals were not yet resolved. The name Epigonoi means offspring or successors. Years have passed, and it's time for this new generation to enter the story. A moment ago, I mentioned how the archaic period epic poem Epigonoi is lost to history. Another retelling of the story is a play, also called Epigonoi, that was written by the famous Athenian playwright Sophocles in the 5th century BC. Sophocles clearly liked the cursed Theban king's stories. He wrote Oedipus Rex, Oedipus at Colonus, Antigone, and also some others. But unfortunately, his play Epigonoi did not survive. So without both Epigonois, how do we know what happens in this part of the Theban cycle? There are, thankfully, some surviving sources that give us an idea of the story's outline, and modern scholars have tried to reconstruct different pieces from fragments of the 2 Epigonois. The main surviving ancient sources are the Greek writers Apollodorus, Diodorus, and Pausanias. All 3 have been mentioned on this pod at various times, but I haven't done a reminder of who they are in a while. Diodorus lived in the 1st century BC, and Apollodorus and Pausanias lived about 200 years later. None of the 3 were poets. Instead, they are considered mythographers, or historians. Diodorus and Apollodorus collected many different stories from Greek mythology, and tried to arrange them in one larger work. Pausanias was a travel writer, but he included stories about a lot of the places he described. Through them, and some other select ancient writers, we learn about the sons of the 7 champions, and their attempt to capture Thebes. This episode retells that story, and also tells what some of the sons of the 7 did afterwards. In the previous episode, I told how immediately after Polynices' failed siege of Thebes, the dead bodies of the attackers surrounded the city. In Sophocles' play Antigone, the new ruler of Thebes, a nobleman named Creon, went out and found the body of the dead Theban king, Eteocles. But he declared that the corpse of Polynices, who Creon considered a terrible traitor, should be left to rot. I told how Antigone, the daughter of Oedipus and brother to both Eteocles and Polynices, thought this was a terrible, God-offending mistake. She went against Creon's order, tragedies ensued, and Polynices was eventually buried. But, at the same time, there were other bodies still piled high on the field outside Thebes, and these included the corpses of the champions who joined Polynices in his attack of Thebes. These men were also being left to rot. So while Antigone was trying to bury Polynices, other women, the mothers of the other champions, were trying to do the same for their kin. The play The Suppliants, sometimes called The Supplicant Women, was written in 423 BC by the Athenian Euripides, and best tells this part of the story. In this version, the mothers of the champions went to Athens. They wanted to perform funerary rites for their dead sons, but the Thebans were preventing the women from getting to the bodies. So the women went with Adrastus, the king of Argos and surviving veteran of the war, to the Athenian king Theseus for help. It would have made a heart-rending sight. Theseus sitting on his great throne, looking down over his assembly room. At his feet crouched the 7 women, crying, pulling their hair, and begging for help. They had also brought their now fatherless grandsons, the sons of the 7 champions, who probably ranged in age from toddlers to older boys. Theseus listened and agreed to help, with a bit of persuasion from his own mother, Aethra. In a handful of these Athenian plays, their founder hero, Theseus, is depicted as a man who has a responsibility to help the unfortunate, so it should be no surprise that he takes some of his soldiers and leaves for Thebes. Eventually, he returns, bringing the bodies of 5 of the 7 dead champions. These were all the bodies he could have brought. Polynices' body was already buried, and the body of the champion Amphiaraus was never found after he was swallowed by the earth in the middle of the previous battle. Once in Athens, the corpses are cremated. The sons of the dead champions carry the urns of their father's ashes in a great ceremonial procession. Then, with the funeral over, the goddess Athena appears. Previously, when the 7 original champions attacked Thebes, they failed, in a large part because the gods did not approve of the siege. At least one of them, Athena, may have been on their side, since she was at first very fond of the champion Tydeus. Now, with the sons of the 7, Athena is back. She brings her patronage once again, but this time the gods as a whole have turned their backs to Thebes, because Athena has this to say. I say this to the sons of the Argives. When you become men, you will destroy Thebes and exact justice for your murdered fathers. As soon as your beards have taken hold over your cheeks, you must lead an army against the towers of 7-gated Thebes. You will charge at them like powerful lion cubs, and they will receive from you the bitter destruction of their city. This cannot be avoided. Throughout Greece you will become so famous that songs will be sung about you for many generations, and they will name you Epigonoi, the successors, the sons of the 7. All this will come with the help of the powers above. Divine declaration delivered, Athena, always with a great flair for the dramatic, disappears. But the sons of the 7 are still too young to fight a war. It will be 10 more years before they can complete the gods' will. Like with their fathers before them, the different sources for this story give slightly different lists for the names of the Epigonoi or sons of the 7. Nevertheless, there is a core group of approximately 7 young heroes. First, there is Thersander, the son of Polynices. It was Polynices' claim to the Theban throne that led to the first failed war against the city-state. After the death of his father, Thersander grew up in exile. He likely spent that time working in service to King Adrastus of Argos, who helped his father so many years before. According to the 5th century BC poet Pindar, Thersander was victorious in youthful contests and in the battles of war. When he decided the time had come to avenge his father, he was ready. Aegialeus, the son of Adrastus, was the next member of the group. His father Adrastus was the only surviving champion of the First Theban War. Like his father before, Aegialeus plays some kind of leadership role in the Sons of the Seven's assembled army. Aegialeus also had a young brother named Cyanippus. He is never listed as one of the Sons of the Seven, probably because he was still too young to participate. Some sources even have Cyanippus as a son of Aegialeus, and not his brother. The next Epigoni is Diomedes, the son of Tydeus. His name means advised by Zeus. Through his parents, Diomedes has connections to two different royal families. Tydeus was an exiled member of the ruling family of Calydon. Diomedes' mother was a daughter of Adrastus of Argos. That means Diomedes is the nephew of the Epigoni Aegialeus. Two more are Sthenelus, son of Capaneus, and Euryalus, son of Megistius. I don't have a whole lot to say about these two. Most of the sons of the seven are, after all, very young men, and don't have much in the way of resumes. Sthenelus and Euryalus have a close relationship with Diomedes. Years later, during the Trojan War, the three of them will fight alongside each other again. A couple more sons of the seven are little more than names. Promachus is the son of the champion Parthenopaeus. He is named in a couple surviving sources, while two more sons of Parthenopaeus, named Beantes and Thlesimenes, are listed by the writer Pausanias. As sons of Parthenopaeus, all three of these young men are grandsons of the huntress hero Atalanta. Pausanias also lists Polydorus, who was the son of the dead champion Hippomedon, as well as two other sons of Polynices. So we're starting to get a fairly healthy list of names here. Again, a few of them don't really get to do much in the surviving literature. The most important sons of the seven so far are probably Thersander, Aegialeus, and Diomedes, with Sthenelus and Euryalus possibly making up a second tier. Nevertheless, our group is not complete. There are two more sons of the seven who need to be introduced. According to Apollodorus and Diodorus, an oracle told the already committed Epigonoi that for their adventure to succeed, they needed Alcmaeon and Amphilochus, the sons of Amphiaraus, to join them. But there was a problem. Alcmaeon did not want to get involved. He was too busy. He had his own commitment. He was tasked with killing his own mother. Years before, during the preparations for the First Theban War, Alcmaeon's father Amphiaraus also did not want to get involved. The reason was Amphiaraus was a seer. He had the powers of prophecy, and he knew that the gods did not approve of the war with Thebes. But the Seven Against Thebes needed him to join, so Polynices went to Amphiaraus's wife Eriphyle. He bribed her with the fabulous necklace of Harmonia, and she then persuaded or forced Amphiaraus to join the war. Before he left, he told his young son Alcmaeon that if he did not return, it was his mother Eriphyle's fault, and that Alcmaeon should avenge his father's death by killing his mother. Amphiaraus did go on to meet his end beneath the walls of Thebes, and Alcmaeon had spent the last 10 years agonizing over his strange duty. At this point, he wanted to avenge his father. If he left on a potentially deadly campaign against Thebes, he might never get the chance. But if the sons of the seven were going to be successful, they needed Alcmaeon. Thersander, the son of Polynices, followed his father's footsteps and went to visit Eriphyle. He brought the luxurious robe of Harmonia, the second item Polynices had taken from the Theban treasury years before. Like how his father did with the necklace, Thersander offered the robe to Eriphyle, as long as she convinced her son, Alcmaeon, to join the other Epigonoi. Once again, she succeeded. It's not clear exactly how she did this. Maybe she just reminded Alcmaeon that he shared the same duty to fight the Thebans as the other Epigonoi. His father did meet his end in the war after all, and maybe she shamed him for his strange reluctance to join. Although the Greek writer Diodorus adds an extra step. According to him, Alcmaeon also asked an oracle to Apollo for advice about joining the Theban campaign or staying behind to punish Eriphyle. Apollo, through the oracle, told Alcmaeon it was the gods' will for him to perform both these deeds, but to go to Thebes first. So, due to the scheming of Thersander, the greed of Eriphyle, and the guidance of Apollo, Alcmaeon gathered his soldiers. He and his younger brother Amphilochus joined the sons of the Seven's army. The Epigonoi were assembled. The army of Argos and its allies had gathered and was ready to march to Thebes. But did they have a leader they all deferred to? Who motivated them all, or oversaw the coming battle? It's not clear. Pausanias says Aegialeus was their leader, but he also suggests Thersander. Euripides suggests Aegialeus too, but with Diomedes also being important. Apollodorus and Diodorus say Alcmaeon. In my opinion, Aegialeus probably makes the most sense, as the whole army is usually described as Argive, and he was the son of the king of Argos. Once they arrived at their destination, like any ancient army, the Epigonoi forces began by laying waste to the villages surrounding Thebes, burning farms, plundering, pillaging. Eventually, they got the attention of the Thebans, who brought out their army to defend the kingdom. After the death of Eteocles at the end of the First Theban War, the nobleman Creon became king. 10 years had passed since then, and Creon no longer reigned. Instead, Thebes was ruled by a new king, Laodamas, the dashing and brave son of Eteocles. It was Laodamas that now led an army out from behind the walls of Thebes to take on the Epigonoi. The two armies came together at nearby Glycis. The fighting was fierce, and many men lost their lives. Pausanias says the Epigonoi Promachus, the son of Parthenopaeus, lost his life. He and other Argive captains were buried there after the battle. According to Apollodorus, the battle brought the Theban king Laodamas face to face with the Epigonoi champion Aegialeus. Laodamas struck him dead, but before the king could end the day's fighting and celebrate, Laodamas was in turn killed by Alcmaeon, although Pausanias' version claims Laodamas escaped and fled the battlefield. This first battle ended with victory for the Argive army. The Thebans retreated through the city's gates, while the surviving Epigonoi prepared their army for a long siege. Behind the large fortified walls, Theban morale was at an all-time low. With their king dead or gone, their army defeated once already, and the Argive army camped outside, hope was in short supply. The Thebans consulted the seer, Tiresias, about what they should do. The old blind prophet simply told them there was no hope, that it was the will of the gods that this time the city of 7 gates should fall. He told the people that they should quickly flee the city. To buy the Thebans time, Tiresias told them to send a messenger to the Epigonoi to open negotiations. It is only a stalling tactic. At the same time, Tiresias leads the Theban people in gathering up their possessions, loading their families on wagons, and saying goodbye to the few Thebans who refused to go. The escaped Thebans eventually arrived at a place called Tilphaseum. There they found a spring. Tiresias lifted the water to his dry lips and quenched his thirst. Afterwards, according to Apollodorus, the old seer, after so many years of guiding Thebes, finally died. The Thebans buried him, and then they scattered to start their own communities elsewhere. Back at Thebes, the Epigonoi learn of the Thebans' escape. They march their armies into the almost empty city. The 7 great gates and the famous Theban walls are pulled down. The remaining valuables collected and dispersed to the conquering soldiers. The few Thebans remaining were taken captive. One of these was Manto, a daughter of Tiresias, who was called Daphne by Diodorus. For whatever reason, she did not leave the city with her father, but remained inside to be captured. The Epigonoi decided to send Manto to serve in the temple at Delphi. They wanted to give thanks to Apollo for their victory, and had previously promised that if they won, they would dedicate the fairest spoils to him. Manto went to Delphi, and there are a couple interesting little stories about her. She became a priestess to Apollo, perhaps even the oracle of Delphi. She married a man, and in one version had sons with the Epigonoi Alcmaeon. She also wrote poetry, which was supposedly so good, Homer copied some of it into his poems. With the war over, the Epigonoi declare themselves to be greater than their fathers. They captured the town of 7-gated Thebes, and in doing so, accomplished the adventure Athena had previously ordered them to avenge the defeat and deaths of the original 7 Against Thebes. Unlike the First Theban War, which ended in the demise of the 7 commanders, The Second Theban War was an Argive success. So what did some of the sons of the Seven do afterwards? Thersander, as the son of Polynices, and after the death of Laodamas, was now, by right of conquest and bloodline, the heir to the Theban throne. When the Epigonoi army dispersed and headed home, Thersander was left behind to become the new king of whatever remained of Thebes. Aegialeus died in the battle at Glycis. According to Pausanias, his body was safely recovered from the battlefield and taken to a place to be buried. When his father Adrastus, the now elderly king of Argos, found out about his son's death, he was so upset he died of grief. Diomedes was the son of Tydeus and Dipyle, the daughter of Adrastus. With the exception of Thersander, whose mother was another daughter of Adrastus, Diomedes was now the last surviving male adult heir to Adrastus. When he returned to Argos, Diomedes was crowned its king. 10 years before, when Polynices first left Thebes, he went to Argos to gain the support of Adrastus and met Diomedes' father Tydeus on the same night. Both Polynices and Tydeus were exiled from their homelands, and Adrastus, after he married them to his daughters, promised to return them both to glory. But when both Polynices and Tydeus died in the First Theban War, that promise was left unfulfilled. Years later, when Tydeus' son Diomedes ruled Argos, he got his own opportunity to set things right in Tydeus' home, Calydon. Tydeus' father, and the king of Calydon, was Oeneus. Oeneus had a number of treacherous, squabbling brothers. Tydeus was originally exiled after murdering some of them. Agrius was another of Oeneus' brothers, and his sons eventually rebelled against Oeneus and put their father Agrius on the throne instead. When Diomedes found out, he gathered some of his trained warriors and made his way to Calydon. The sons of Agrius were killed, and in one version, Agrius commits suicide. Apollodorus says this event happened after the Epigonoi's victory, while the Roman poet Hyginus says it happened even later, after the Trojan War. I've decided to place it here, following Apollodorus. With his cousins dead, Diomedes put his grandfather Oeneus back on the throne. But again, in another version, this time by Pausanias, Oeneus came to live with Diomedes in Argos and died before his treacherous nephews could be dealt with. Earlier in the episode, I spoke how the Epigoni Alcmaeon struggled with how to prioritize his duty to avenge his father's death on his mother and to avenge his father's death on the Thebans. Apollo told him to do both, but to join the Second Theban War first. Well, the war was over, and it was time for Alcmaeon to deal with Eriphyle. It was at this point that Alcmaeon discovered Thersander's earlier bribery of Eriphyle. It's not clear how he learned this, but what it did do was make his anger towards his mother approach a frenzy. In Alcmaeon's mind, Eriphyle had instigated the demise of his father by treacherously taking the necklace of Harmonia. Then, years later, she almost caused his own demise too, when she treacherously took the robe of Harmonia as well. Alcmaeon hurried home to deal out his vigilante justice for Amphiaraus. He stabbed his mother Eriphyle to death. He may have been helped by his brother Amphilochus. We don't have a lot of information on this part of the story, but it was a popular one in ancient Greece. The Alcmaeonese is a lost archaic period epic poem that focused on it, and at least a dozen plays from the 4th and 5th centuries BC also told this story. Sophocles himself wrote 3, called Alcmaeon, Epigoni, and Eriphyle. All are lost to history, but likely touched on or focused on the circumstances of Eriphyle's death and the aftermath. Fortunately, Apollodorus leaves us with an overview. Alcmaeon killed his mother, and this was a big problem. God's will or not, it went against Zeus's natural order of things. He became a marked man to the Furies, the goddesses of vengeance. Alcmaeon was driven insane, and taking the necklace and robe from his mother's corpse, he left Argos to travel across Greece. The goal here was to be purified for his mother's murder. this could only be performed by a king. Alcmaeon eventually arrived at the court of King Phegeus at Zophis in southern Greece. Phegeus welcomed the hero, purified him, and then married Alcmaeon to his daughter Arsinoe. Alcmaeon gave Arsinoe the necklace and robe of Harmonia as a wedding present, but purification by the king's hand was not enough. Alcmaeon's madness was not cured. It grew worse. Grew worse in that the land of Zophis began to imitate the king's new son-in-law's state of mind. The land went barren. Crops failed and could not be sown. The people went hungry. Once again, the words of Apollo came to Alcmaeon. He was told the famine was due to his presence there. Apollo told Alcmaeon to leave Zophis and go find Aegialeus, a powerful river spirit living in northwest Greece. Alcmaeon followed the advice and again traveled across Greece. Eventually, Alcmaeon found Aegialeus. Greek historian Thucydides and Pausanias tell us this was at a land that did not exist before Eriphyle's death. This was atop a mound of earth that was deposited by Aegialeus's river. Unlike Alcmaeon, we have encountered Aegialeus on this pod before. Aegialeus wrestled with Heracles over who got to marry the woman Deianira. Unlike with Heracles, Alcmaeon and Aegialeus did not fight. Aegialeus heard Alcmaeon's story and purified the hero. Alcmaeon then settled nearby and married Aegialeus's daughter, the nymph Callirrhoe. His new second wife was told about Alcmaeon's past adventures. She found out about the necklace and robe of Harmonia and wanted them. Of course, they were still in the possession of Phegeus and Alcmaeon's first wife, Arsinoe. Alcmaeon reluctantly left his pregnant second wife and returned to Zophis. He convinced Phegeus and Arsinoe that his visit was temporary. He was only stopping by on his way to Delphi, and, oh, by the way, he needed the necklace and robe of Harmonia back. If he dedicated it to Apollo at Delphi, he would be cured of his madness. They believed him. They had no reason not to. But Phegeus overheard a servant of Alcmaeon mention what was really going on. Phegeus was incensed. He ordered his 2 sons to ambush Alcmaeon. They did, and killed him. Alcmaeon's first wife, now widow, found out. She didn't want Alcmaeon to die. She confronted her brothers, but they grabbed her, sealed her in a chest, and took her to a city called Tegea. There, they claimed she had murdered Alcmaeon, and they had captured her. The ruler of Tegea believed them, and Arsinoe was wrongfully imprisoned and enslaved. Meanwhile, back in the land of Aegialeus, the god Zeus appeared. He tried to seduce Alcmaeon's second widow, classic Zeus, and told Callirrhoe about Alcmaeon's death. She was upset. She loved her dead husband, and she asked Zeus for a favor. The nymph asked the king of the gods to make her sons with Alcmaeon fully grown, so they could avenge the death of their father. Thanks to Zeus, the 2 young boys, Acarnan and Amphiaraus, were suddenly grown adults, which probably left them severely stunted emotionally. They went on a hunt, and found the sons of Phegeus at Tegea, and killed both of them. The grown sons of Alcmaeon then went to Zophis, and killed Phegeus too. They retrieved the cursed necklace and robe of Harmonia, which at this point has amassed quite the body count, and then they returned to their mother and grandfather. Aegialeus told them to take the damned treasures to Delphi and dedicate them to Apollo. The sons of Alcmaeon did so. So that's the story of the sons of the 7, how they were tasked with avenging their fathers by the goddess Athena and successfully led an army to capture the city. Their number included a handful of important Greek heroes. Diomedes, Thersander, and others went on to have other adventures. The life of Alcmaeon is very much a thread that runs through the whole story, so I wanted to end this episode with his demise. But there is a longer thread that runs through the whole Theban cycle and even beyond. That thread is the presence of Harmonia's cursed necklace and robe. Way back at the beginning of this season of Myth Madness, episode 32 featured the founding of Thebes. That was when Harmonia's nasty treasures first made their appearance, and their cursed nature was felt by the first king and queen of Thebes. In a way, since then, the necklace and robe have represented all the troubles faced by each generation of the Theban royal family. Here, the necklace and robe appeared again, even after Thebes' gates were busted, and one hero foolishly took them into his possession. In the end, the necklace and robe were taken to Delphi and given to Apollo. There, the necklace, or at least what the ancient Greeks thought was the necklace, was kept stored until the 4th century BC, when a local tyrant stole it. Shortly after, the tyrant's house caught fire, and his family died in the flames. Buried in ash, the necklace passed out of myth and history, and hopefully its curse went along with it. And that's all for today. If you enjoyed this episode, get out your phone, you know it's nearby, and send the link to one friend and tell them about it. As always, thank you for listening.